some more fairy tales to read for you, to you. So this time we're starting on the third story, which is, I think, the three spinners. Perhaps. So this obviously is spinning, like a spinning wheel. Once there was a girl who could not spin thread. She could do other things, but she could not or would not spin. It made her mother very angry to see her idle at the spinning wheel. "You lazy, lazy girl," she would shout, and then she would hit the girl across the shoulders. One day when she was shouting and the girl was sitting crying at the spinning wheel, the Queen happened to pass by in her coach. She heard the girl crying and called to her coachman to stop the horses. "Why are you beating your daughter?" she asked. "Why are you shouting at her? Why is she crying? What has she done?" A queen's questions should always be answered truthfully, but the old woman was too ashamed to say she thought her daughter was lazy, so she said instead, "My daughter loves to spin. I am only a poor old woman, and I cannot afford to buy the flax. She cries because she wants to spin. I do not know what to do." "Your troubles are over," said the Queen, who, as it happened, loved to hear the whir of the spinning wheel and to see freshly spun thread. "I have plenty of flax at the palace. I will take your daughter home with me, and she can spin as much as she likes." The Queen took the girl to the palace and showed her 3 rooms which were full from floor to ceiling with unspun flax. "Spin all that flax into thread, my dear, and you shall marry my son," said the Queen. The poor girl did not know what to do. Of course she wanted to marry the prince, but how could she? She didn't know how to spin. For 3 whole days she sat and wept. On the 3rd day the Queen came to see her. "Why are you weeping, child? Why haven't you started to spin?" asked the Queen. The poor girl sobbed even harder. "I brought you to the palace to spin flax," said the Queen sternly. "If there is no thread for me to see tomorrow, you will be punished." When the Queen had swept majestically from the room, the poor sad girl stood at the window overlooking the street and cried as though her heart would break. Presently, through her tears, she saw 3 strange women walking along the pavement. One of them had a very broad, flat foot. One of them had a lip that hung down over her chin, and the third had an enormous thumb. One of the women called up to the window and asked the girl why she was weeping. "I do want to marry the prince," she sobbed, "but first I must spin all this flax, and I do not know how to spin." "If you will call us aunt and be unashamed of our strange appearance, and if you will invite us to sit with you at your wedding, we will help you," said the 3 women. "I shall be glad to call you aunt," said the girl. The 3 strange women were as good as their word. They slipped unnoticed into the palace and set to work. The one with the broad, flat foot worked with a spinning wheel. The one with the lip which hung over her chin wetted the flax, and the one with the enormous thumb twisted the thread. Together they spun the finest thread the Queen had ever seen. She was impressed, though she thought the girl herself had done the spinning, for the 3 strange women hid whenever they heard the Queen coming. At last all the flax had been spun, and it was time for the wedding. When the arrangements were being made, the girl said to the Queen, "I have 3 aunts who have been very kind to me. May I invite them to the wedding, and may they sit with me at the table?" "Of course," said the Queen. An invitation was sent, and on the day of the wedding, the 3 strange women arrived and were welcomed kindly by the girl and the prince. "Tell me, aunt," said the prince, who couldn't help noticing such things, "why have you such a broad, flat foot?" "Because I tread a spinning wheel," said the first ant. "And how is it that you have such a long lip?" he asked the second ant. "Because I wet the spinning thread," said the second ant. "And why have you such a large thumb?" asked the prince of the third ant. "Because I twist the spinning thread," she answered. The prince looked at the three strange women, one with a broad flat foot, one with a lip that hung down over her chin, and one with an enormous thumb, and then he looked over at his beautiful bride. "If that is what spinning thread does to a woman," he said, "I forbid you to ever touch a spinning wheel." And so the girl married her prince, and the three spinners moved into the palace to take care of all the spinning. They loved spinning as much as the girl loved the prince, and so everyone was happy. So this one's called Foolish Jack. Oh dear. No, I'm not sure if he's foolish or if he's clumsy. Foolish Jack never stopped to think things out for himself, and sometimes, as you can well imagine, that led him into trouble. One day his mother sent him out to work. He raked hay all day for the farmer, and at the end of the day the farmer gave him a penny. Jack tied the penny in his handkerchief, but somewhere on the way home he lost the handkerchief and the penny. "You silly boy," said his mother, "you should have put it in your pocket." Next day Jack went to work at the dairy. When evening came, the dairyman gave him a jug of milk. Jack did not want to lose the milk, as he had lost the penny, so he put the jug in his pocket. He had to tip it on its side to get it in, and of course it spilt. What a mess it made. "You silly boy," said his mother when he got home, "you should have carried it on your head." The following day Jack helped the man who kept hens. He gave Jack 6 brown eggs to take home. "I know exactly what to do to keep them safe," said Jack. He ruffled his hair and balanced the eggs on his head, as though he was a tree and his hair was a nest. It wasn't a very good nest, and eggs having no corners to stop them rolling, it wasn't long before they rolled off Jack's head and onto the ground. "You silly boy," said his mother when he got home, "you should have carried them in your hands." Next day Jack was given a roly-poly piglet. If you have ever tried to carry a roly-poly piglet, you will know that Jack didn't get very far before the piglet had struggled free and run away. "You silly boy," said his mother when he got home, "you should have led it home on a string." Jack was determined not to lose any more wages. When the butcher gave him a joint of meat for his labours, he tied a string round that and led that home behind him. What the dogs and cats didn't snatch was covered in dust. "You silly boy," said his mother, stamping her foot crossly, "you should have carried it on your shoulder." She was so cross she sent him off to bed without any supper. And then Jack's luck changed, though it didn't seem like it to begin with. He had worked all day for the goat herd and had been given a goat to take home. Now it so happened that on the way home every day Jack had to pass the house of a rich man. The rich man had a beautiful daughter who had never laughed, and he promised that the first person to make her laugh should marry her. She had watched Jack go by the house every day. When she saw him trying to carry eggs on her head, her eyes had twinkled. When she saw him trying to carry a roly-poly piglet, she had smiled just a little. On the day he came past the house with a protesting goat wrapped around his neck like a scarf, and with his own knees buckling beneath him, she burst into merry peals of laughter. And that was how Jack found a wife. She was sensible as she was rich, and she taught Jack to think for himself, and so they lived happily ever after. One more. Precious gift. Once upon a time, there was a king who had 3 daughters. One day, one of them would be queen. The king could not decide which of them it should be, for they were all beautiful and they were all clever. "I must make up my mind somehow," he said. "I wonder what I can do." He thought, and at last he made a decision. "I will ask each of my daughters to bring me a gift," he said, "and the one who brings me the most precious shall be queen." On the appointed day he summoned them to the throne room. The eldest brought a silver bird in a silver cage, which sang when a key was wound. "A truly beautiful gift," murmured the king. The second daughter brought a robe of finest silk, trimmed with the softest fur. Another truly beautiful gift, murmured the king. The third daughter brought a plain china bowl, which was so small it nestled in the palm of her hand. The king held his breath as he lifted the lid. What precious gift would he find inside it? When the king did see what was in the tiny bowl, his face went red and then it went purple. "How dare you?" he shouted. He jumped to his feet and threw the little bowl to the floor. "How dare you insult me by bringing me common salt?" But, the poor little princess tried to say something, but the king shouted, and the more he shouted, the more angry he became. "Go," he shouted. "Go, and never come back. Never, never, never." Of course he was sorry he had said what he did when his temper cooled down, but by then it was too late. The little princess had left the palace. She wandered sadly until she came to an inn. "Please let me stay here," she begged. "I have nowhere to go. I will work. I will do anything you ask." The innkeeper did not know she was a princess, or he would have given her his best room and waited on her himself. Instead, he sent her down to the kitchen to help the cook. The cook was a kindly woman. She taught the little princess all she knew about cooking. The princess was quick to learn. Before long, people were coming to the inn especially to taste her pies and to sample her soups and sauces. The kindly old cook was getting old, and gradually the little princess did more and more of the cooking, until soon she was doing it all. Everyone who went to the inn talked for days afterwards about the delicious food eaten there, and it was only a matter of time before the king came to hear about the cook who could cook anything, and what was more, cook it perfectly. "She must come to work in the palace kitchens," he said. "She is the best, and the king always has the best." And so it was that the king's own daughter worked in the palace kitchens and cooked the king's meals, and no one, least of all the king, had no idea who she really was. The day came when the king's eldest daughter was to be married. Such a hustle and a bustle there was in the palace kitchens. Any banquet is important, but a wedding banquet is the most important of all, especially when a princess is marrying a prince. The little princess, who was now a cook, worked hard and long to get everything prepared. After the wedding, the king and his guests sat down at the tables in the banqueting hall. The king clapped his hands. "Let the banquet and the merrymaking begin," he cried. The pages and the footmen filed into the hall carrying silver platters piled high with the most delicious food it had ever been the king's privilege to see. "What a wonderful cook you must have," said a visiting emperor. The king felt so proud, and then, as was the custom, he lifted his fork and waited for the first bite of food. Everyone watched and waited for the sign that they too could begin to eat. To their astonishment, the king pulled a face and spat out the food. Princes and princesses, lords and ladies, footmen and pages stared at the king with open mouths, as he tried dish after dish, scowling harder and harder with each mouthful he tasted. Suddenly he threw down his fork, and in a voice like thunder he shouted, "Fetch the cook!" He looked so angry everyone trembled, even the visiting emperor, and he didn't frighten easily. "What's wrong? What's wrong?" echoed in whispers round the hall. The cook came and stood with her head bowed in front of the king, who by now was scarlet with rage. "You have cooked the food without salt," he roared. "The banquet is ruined. You have shamed me in front of my guests. How dare you forget something so important?" "But I did not forget," said the cook, who was really a princess. The king was so astonished at a humble cook daring to answer him back, he said nothing, and so she was able to continue. "A long time ago, you banished a daughter because she gave you a gift of common salt." The king sat down with a bump on his chair. Yes, he did remember that. He had been sorry ever since. But how did the cook know about it? He looked at her closely. She lifted her head so that he could see her face and smiled. The king jumped to his feet, scattering dishes with a clatter he did not hear. "Daughter," he cried, "it's you. Can you ever forgive me? You truly gave me a very precious gift, and I was too foolish to know it." Of course the princess forgave her father, and the banquet was not spoiled because she had arranged that only the king's food should be cooked without salt. There was more food already prepared for him in the kitchen. And so the king and his daughter were reunited, and the princess once again took her rightful place in the palace.